good evening to everyone here. So it's my second, sort of session at TIE. There's been quite a bit of a gap. My last session at TIE on raising the next round of funding was almost 4 years back when I used to work at Spark Capital, which is where I spend most of my time. But yeah, just to give you guys a little bit of a sense of what we do at Capita. We are a digital equity management company. We are a software platform for digital equity management. And by that, we mean we have a product today which helps you digitize your ownership, your cap table, and view it, in an online fashion, as well as digitally administer your ESOP, which is the sort of relevant portion of our discussion today. So we are headquartered in Singapore, focused on India and Southeast Asia. So Srikanth and I are part of the India team, India leadership team. We are a fairly young company, a young startup. We're a year and a half old, spent most of a year in developing our product, and we have been in the market just for around 3 months or so, I should say. So let me just share my screen, and then we can sort of get started. So I think you already have a sense of who we are. So what seek to cover in this session today is to give you a perspective of the way we have sort of seen it, what ESOPs mean. Demystify a lot of the jargon surrounding ESOPs, and give you a walkthrough of what it means for a startup founder to understand, formulate, and implement an ESOP scheme. So we're going to split this into two. I'll cover a sense and give you guys a sense of how ESOPs work and demystify some of the jargon surrounding it. Then I'll turn it over to my colleague Srikanth, and he'll give you a sense of our platform itself and how it can actually help you implement and manage your ESOP scheme. Please feel free to drop your questions in the chat window. I think we will keep answering as and when we are sort of able to. Even if not, I see this taking us maybe a little bit over an hour. So we'll have at least 20 minutes for questions. You can choose to cover your questions in the Q&A session as well, or in any case, we will cover all the questions which have been raised so far, and try to cover it in the Q&A sort of time. And I hope that works for everyone. So without further ado, stepping back a bit from ESOPs itself, I just want to spend just a couple of minutes on the way we sort of see entrepreneurship and the way we see a startup and what an entrepreneur means. The way we see it, an entrepreneur basically brings a set of ingredients together and takes it, and creates his company, and takes it to whatever heights he's actually able to take it to. The ingredients we sort of see are: one, the idea itself, the idea with the capital I, the one sort of dream which entrepreneur has, the market gap which he sees, and the opportunity which he sort of sees to set up something which will sort of endure even beyond him. So this is basically the thing which keeps your startup founders, entrepreneurs, helps them get up in the morning, get to work, spend long hours, and dedicate the next significant portion of their lives to building, right? So that's what we sort of see as the idea. Combine that with the most important thing which the entrepreneur brings to the table, the energy, drive, and initiative. We think it's like a quantifiable sort of a resource which the entrepreneur has. Combine that with capital, which could be bootstrap your own capital, but given the ecosystem which is so vibrant in India, external capital as well. And the most important element of it, the team. So once you have all the three elements in place, as you start scaling up the business, it becomes very, very important to ensure that you have a team of people around you who share your vision and who are sort of willing to fight this battle alongside yourself. It's very commonly sort of quoted that every entrepreneur, every startup founder needs to be a salesman first. But the first thing, one perspective we just want to leave is that the first thing the entrepreneur should sell is his vision. So he sells his vision to customers, the market, partners, suppliers, etc., to the providers of capital, and attract capital to his sort of entity, and most importantly to his employees as well. So the way the entrepreneur motivates himself to get out of bed and to sort of spend time in his sort of pursuing his startup idea. How do you sort of get your employees, your key employees, and eventually all your employees to have the same vision and to sort of fall under your banner and move with the same element of purpose? That's where we believe ESOPs, sort of play a very, very major role. From a very basic perspective, what is an ESOP? The corporate finance definition of ESOP is it is a call option to purchase shares of a company. So it is a right, but not the obligation, which is given to an employee to purchase the company shares, invest in the company, and get ownership of the company at a certain price, right? Your ESOPs, as far as Indian regulations are concerned, typically will cover the employees of a company. Founders are specifically excluded from the purview of an ESOP scheme, and that's just the regulations of India. So typically, an ESOP scheme, the way the Companies Act defines it, it only covers employees, but we have structures of ESOP scheme which can cover other people as well, which I'll shortly sort of get into as part of the presentation. So it's an option and it's not an obligation to purchase shares at a defined price, and that's what is called as a strike price. Just a little bit of the jargon coming in there. And over a period of time. So again, you don't provide this option typically upfront and tell the employee, you can come in and you can purchase shares of my company on day one. You will have something called a vesting period, and tell them that, okay, you will not purchase it today, but I'm going to give you a 3-year time frame over which you can purchase it in installments. So there's a certain quantum which I'm going to allow you to purchase, and you can sort of do it over a time frame. Again, Indian regulations state that you need a minimum of 12 months from the time you make a grant to the time the employee actually gets the right to purchase the shares. That's what is typically called as the vesting period. So the value of an ESOP in the hands of an employee is basically the value of the shares itself, less the strike price. So the company shares may get more and more valuable as time goes by, as you, let's say, raise more rounds of funding at higher valuation. You would have given options to your employee at a certain defined fixed strike price, let's say, with a vesting period of 3 years or 4 years. And over the value creation journey of the startup itself, the employee will see that his ESOPs and his holdings become more and more valuable. Right. So that's basically what the whole point of ESOPs is to foster a sense of ownership among employees and to give them an element of upside, because at some level your early employees take a similar risk as compared to the founder in the early stages of a company. So ESOPs are a very, very important tool for wealth creation, especially among employees. To give you a sense of how big this sort of market is and how big this phenomenon is, we just did a study of the 40 unicorns in India, the companies which have crossed $1 billion in terms of valuation. So the value of all the unicorns in India today, 40 of them, is around $130 billion. There have been other studies very recently which say that this value is actually in excess of 240. There is a study by Credit Suisse saying that there are actually 100 unicorns in India. They've counted a lot of the unicorns, a lot of companies which are greater than $1 billion, which are not typically covered by your startup press. And they've actually come up with the number of 250, but even conservatively assuming 130 here. Even if I assume very conservatively that 2% of these companies on an average are held by their employees and held in the form of ESOPs or for employee incentives, that represents a value of $2.6 billion today. So that's to give you a sense of the value creation. And I would, I will estimate that a lot of these unicorns were founded over the last 10 to 15 years. So in a 15-year sort of time frame, to see this degree of value creation through the efforts of employees, I think is phenomenal. And these numbers are only poised to sort of go up, right? So it goes without saying that ESOPs are here to stay. They will play a very, very critical role in any startup. And eventually you'll sort of start seeing this ecosystem getting created of people working in large startups, having ESOPs, monetizing their ESOPs, and armed with the experience and the initiative and the capital as well, they're actually able to go and create startups of their own. So that's how you see, different, sort of so-called mafias getting created, PayPal mafia or the Zoho or Freshworks mafia closer to Chennai. But what we see ESOPs doing is also, we see it helping in developing and deepening this ecosystem, which I guess is a great thing for the country itself. So why ESOPs? Why would you even go down the path of considering an ESOP scheme and implementing an ESOP scheme if you're a startup founder? Clearly, you want to align incentives with value creation. So cash salary is one thing, but you want to ensure that the employee also makes an upside when you make an upside or the company sort of does well, right? So that's one element of it. You want to ensure that the right performers in the organization are being rewarded accordingly, and the employees are being rewarded for working with you and increasing the valuation and increasing the value of the company itself. ESOPs as a tool to drive entrepreneurial behavior. So you want employees, your early set of employees, and the people, the first 15-20 people you hire in any startup should be like quasi founders and should behave like founders, should be risk takers for the most part, should be able to operate independently, and you want to encourage all these behaviors, and you do it by actually giving them the upside in the form of ESOPs. And like I said, what the point which I covered earlier on ESOPs being a very important value creation, wealth creation tool. You can see an employee breaking out from that sort of category and potentially becoming a founder or an entrepreneur in his next sort of stint by manner of having an ESOP sort of a pool, an ESOP scheme like this. From a very sort of cost conscious perspective, it's also a means to sort of attract talent to your company while keeping your cash outflow sort of reasonable. So if you were to pay certain employees, you have certain star employees whom you would like to bring on board to your company as it's sort of scaling up. If you were to pay them their cash salary in full, you will quickly realize that you will run out of cash, or you will never be able to make profits if you go down in that sort of direction. So it's a useful tool for especially in early stage companies, for founders to go and tell employees that please don't look for a payout today. I can only pay you X amount in terms of cash, in terms of your monthly salary, but work with me for the ESOPs. You will get a non-linear upside. You may end up making a lot more wealth than what you would have made if I just paid you your market salary. And that's what I want you to work for, and that's the upside, and that's a risk which I ask you to sort of take and work along with me. You'll also ensure that you get the right, sort of set of employees through an action like this, employees who actually are willing to sacrifice short-term, sort of gains and short-term cash, sort of cash salary, and work more for the long-term ESOP gain. So you'll also attract the right sort of employees by doing this. And the whole reason why you sort of allow the ESOPs, you have a vesting schedule, and you allow ESOPs to sort of vest over a period, and you allow the employee also to take it into shares over a period, is also that you look at this tool as a tool for employee retention. So the rationale for a vesting schedule is, one, value doesn't get created in a day or even in a year. It may take 3 to 4 years or even longer to actually see the efforts of the employee result in value for the company. And you want to ensure that the employee also stays back with a longer term mission to create that value and then take the upside. So it's a useful tool for employee retention. The way these plans are also structured incentivize the employee to stay longer in the company. So, several, sort of benefits, I would say, and several, sort of key things which an entrepreneur should think about in sort of quickly implementing his ESOP scheme. But even if you're not completely sold on it, the prevailing market practice is that once you go on for a round of external equity funding, it used to happen at an institutional level, at a, let's say, a Series A sort of funding or beyond. But nowadays we are seeing this practice happening even at a seed stage, even when angels are investing, is that your investors will actually tell you, please create an ESOP pool. Because there, it's very sort of commonly established that you cannot create a world-class company and a world-class startup just with the actions of the founder, and where only the founder sees upside in the value creation. So most external investors, external equity investors, at the time of funding, would actually have a precondition in their documents to sort of say that before we invest in your company, please create and please reserve a portion of your ownership for employees, for ESOPs. Please create an ESOP pool. And you can sort of grant it later, but before my capital comes in, I want this pool to be created. So it's becoming more and more a very, very, sort of a hygiene practice for companies which want to raise external equity to actually create an ESOP pool and to go down the path of granting ESOPs. Now, having said that, there are in our mind, as we sort of speak to more and more startup founders, several frictions in the manner in which ESOPs are work in India today, in some elements of regulation as well. And more importantly, just from an awareness and technicality perspective, we see some frictions, which is why one very common practice and very common occurrence for me when I worked as an investment banker is that companies agree to create an ESOP pool because they are raising funding, but they put off the actual creation and the actual process of granting ESOPs until the next round of funding. So typically we used to run the next round of funding, and then it will come up as a diligence item to say that, okay, this company and the founder have agreed to create an ESOP pool and grant ESOPs, but no action has been taken. And that becomes a condition precedent to the next round of funding. So, which is where I pretty much got to learn about how ESOPs work, because in several of these cases for my clients, for the purpose of fundraise, we also had to step in and ensure that the ESOP scheme creation and the ESOP grants happen before the next round of funding. So why is that, such a friction? I think we see a few reasons, we just want to sort of cover it here. There is a certain perceived complexity in setting up and administering ESOPs. And I say this is perceived because I think with the information age today, with so many resources available online and with forums like TIE as well, it's more of a perceived, sort of a problem rather than an actual problem. But yeah, there are a lot of jargon surrounding ESOPs. Founders typically feel that, okay, I have to spend a lot of time and my bandwidth rather than growing the business into sort of figuring this out. So let me just put it off till later. So that's something which, sort of continues to happen. We see that problem even as of today. It has become better. There are a lot of resources out there, but we see this perceived complexity and the fact that, okay, setting up an ESOP scheme is fairly tedious and fairly complex. And we need to ensure that we are doing the right things, which is going to require bandwidth from my side, right? That sort of feeling is still there among startup founders. There has been, I would say till 2019, the track record of wealth creation in the form of ESOPs was a little bit limited, is what I would say. And I would say, and maybe not from an actual perspective, but from a publicized perspective as well. Because let's say till 2018 and 2019, when people talk about, okay, certain employees or certain, sort of startup people working in startups, how many do you know who have actually made money on ESOPs? The instances seem to be a little bit low. In the early 2000s, it used to be with the IT majors, your Infosys, Wipro, who made money through ESOPs when their companies went public. But that's, at some level, a fairly long, sort of time frame. More recently, once Flipkart got sold to Walmart, that is when you saw a lot of news about a lot of dollar millionaires getting created because they held shares in Flipkart. Just before the pandemic hit, we read about White Hat Junior being sold to Byju's, and that was another instance where they had a certain ESOP pool. And if my memory serves right, the ESOP pool based on the valuation itself was somewhere in the region of 200 crores. So these are, a few sporadic examples, but you did not really see a very established pattern here till I would say till the pandemic hit. So people who have been tracking the news, and we have been sort of tracking this separately ourselves. So most companies after the pandemic hit had to sort of conserve cash, and a lot of startups had to take, sort of very tough measures like, instituting pay cuts and layoffs, etc. So once things started clearing up a little bit and people started coming back into work, they basically did two things. A lot of these well-known startups, your typical unicorns and other startups as well, started enhancing their ESOP pool and started granting more ESOPs to employees, basically to sort of compensate them for sticking with the company and for taking pay cuts and sacrificing along with the company during the pandemic. So this became a very, very sort of common practice. Over a course of, I would say, 2 to 3 months, we saw a lot of well-known unicorns, well-known, well-covered startups go down this path. What they also started doing is to allow for employees to seek liquidity as well. So pretty much with the top well-known startups in India, a lot of them, when they did their first round of funding post-pandemic, they negotiated and they asked for a certain portion to be reserved and kept for their employees to monetize their ESOPs. So suddenly we saw a flurry of ESOP liquidity and ESOP buyback, sort of programs in the news. Not just with the top, sort of companies like Oyo and Zomato, etc., but also with companies which are at a Series B level itself. Companies like Wakefit, for example. So even a company which has probably only raised around $15 to $20 million of funding is actually negotiating with investors to say that, I think my employees need some liquidity. I need to showcase that there is some upside of them having worked for 3, 4, 5 years with me. I'm definitely going to insist that as an investor, you guys, invest a little bit more and take out some of the ESOPs which the employees are holding. So I would say this is this track record of wealth creation was an issue till maybe year and a half back, but over the last year I think we have seen almost 35 to 40 different instances of ESOP buyback, ESOP liquidity programs being launched. I think the next wave which is going to come now is the more mature startups in India going for IPO, like Policybazaar, Zomato, etc., Delivery, etc. So once those companies go for IPO, I think you'll see the next wave of wealth creation happening in the hands of those employees, and probably that will go into the startup ecosystem as well. So apart from limited wealth creation, a big problem which we sort of see is that the communication of value to employees has been very, very sporadic and has been very, very patchy from a company's perspective. And this is something which companies and startups and founders need to take note of. They go through it as a matter of process, and okay, I have to institute an ESOP scheme, I do it. I have to grant ESOPs to my employees, I do that as well. And then typically things go on radio silence mode for quite a bit of time. So what this means is that employees, typically even the employees who are fairly financially savvy, who understand how ESOPs work, don't really get a sense of how much their ESOPs are actually worth. So each time a funding round happens, one can try to get some benchmarks, but a vast majority of employees also don't track some of those things. So one key problem we saw was companies don't have a system to proactively engage with employees, to educate them about how the ESOPs themselves work, and to give them some communication to say that, okay, you have a pool of ESOPs which may vest over a period of time. That pool is actually something very, very valuable, which I have given you as a startup to you as an employee. That element of communication in our mind should be upfront when the options are getting granted, and should also happen on a very, very periodic basis. So that's something which is not happening, which results in the fact that the employees may get an ESOP award, but he just doesn't value it. He says, okay, I have got a piece of paper saying I have so many ESOPs, I'm going to file it and forget it. That's sort of behavior we sort of see happening. Lack of liquidity, I sort of covered, so wealth creation and communication may also be there. But, you typically, prior to this year, ESOP liquidity was primarily once a company goes for an IPO, or if, the founders decide to, or the company takes a decision to sell to a larger strategic player, and then all the shareholders make money. But like I said before, the concept of liquidity programs and getting investors, the next round of investors to provide liquidity to employees, that's becoming more and more established. So this again is something which is changing. One reason why ESOPs again, people struggle to make it work in India is the manner of taxation. I'll cover taxation of ESOPs in a separate slide, but it's at a level where, or the manner in which the taxation regime works for ESOPs, I would say is a little bit unfair to the employee. The employee finds himself in a situation where he has to pay tax, although he hasn't actually sold the shares, which he has sort of got through the ESOPs. And finally, more of a psychological thing among founders, just a reluctance to share ownership. What happens? So founders typically ask themselves this question, saying, "What happens if I get my employees onto my cap table? I start giving them shares. And does it mean that in my next AGM, this guy can sort of get up and ask me questions? How is the relationship going to work? Do I ask him questions, or does he sort of ask me questions?" So a lot of I would say misconceptions and reservations are there among founders. And there are ways to address it. I think one may be very well justified to sort of say that, okay, I don't want employees to sort of create problems for me. I want them to make an upside, but I don't want them to create issues for me. So you have various structures and various means by which you can address these issues, which I think people probably are not very well aware of. So with some of, let's say, even with some new startups and well-established startups, we see this sort of a mentality to say that, no, let me not go down this path of ESOPs. I'm happy to give cash to my employees. I will motivate them. I will reward them. But to get them onto my ownership itself, I just have some reservations. So a few things, but like I said, there are solutions for each of them. A lot of these problems deal with awareness and market practice, all of which are also changing. And we are hoping our platform itself, solves some of these problems specific to communication, specific to lack of liquidity, etc. So, like I said, ESOP, there are a lot of jargons associated with ESOPs. And what we are trying to do here is basically simplify it and put it into, let's say, plain English, for people to sort of understand what each of these specific terms mean. But they're all there for a reason, which we'll try to cover when we look at how ESOPs work, right? So like I said, the step one for which typically happens is that you agree to create an ESOP pool. So this is something mostly which happens when you raise a round of funding, where your investor in your shareholder documents and in your investment agreement has a clause to say that, okay, before my investment, please create a pool of 5% to be given to your employees. Please set it aside. Please reserve it for them, right? So you will have that. So the step one typically happens when you raise funding, right? Then after you've done that, right? After the funding is done, you are supposed to draft and adopt an ESOP plan. So an ESOP plan is like a legal document. Under the Companies Act, you're required to draft this document, present it in a board meeting, get approval from your board of directors, and then the plan is treated as live. So the ESOP plan basically governs how your ESOP scheme will work. So it's got several, sort of very basic clauses like what is the size of your scheme. So you create an ESOP pool, let's say of 5%, representing, let's say 100,000 shares. So you cover that in your plan. What is the strike price at which you want to grant these ESOPs? How much are you going to ask the employees to pay when they actually come to you and say that, okay, give me shares in hand, I'm exercising my option. What are the key policies of your company when it comes to, let's say, okay, you have an employee working for you, and you have a certain vesting schedule, right? What happens if the employee leaves, he resigns? What should you as a company do, right? So a lot of these policies are basically captured in your ESOP plan. So it's a legal document, which typically you may have a lawyer or you may have an ESOP advisor draft a document like this, but there are several, sort of very standard plan documents which are available as well. So you create this ESOP plan and you sort of present it to your board, get board approval. And once you're done with that, you are actually set in terms of granting your ESOPs. So the manner in which you communicate to an employee to say that, okay, I value your service. And in recognition of that, I am giving you an ESOP pool, an ESOP grant of 1,000. So you have 1,000 ESOPs with you. Based on your vesting schedule, you will be able to convert it into shares. And this is the value of the grant which I'm making for you over the next 3 years or 4 years or whatever, right? So that process of communication and actually giving the ESOPs to the employees, what is a grant? Typically the grant takes a form of a grant letter. You actually have a physical grant letter which you give to your employee, which captures how many ESOPs he has, what is the strike price, and what is the vesting schedule. So the way grants work is that, typically, it's very rare where I've seen a company at the time of formation itself create an ESOP plan. Typically, they do it as part of the first round of funding. So when you want to grant, you may actually find that I have a set of employees who have been with me for 2-3 years. And in any case, I want them covered by my ESOP scheme. So the typical practice is that as soon as your plan gets ready, you will have a set of employees to whom you will do an immediate grant as a one-time sort of a thing. Some of your past employees you will cover. So you may have, let's say, 10, 15 or 20 employees, and you will give them all grant letters and say that, okay, now you guys have ESOPs in my company. What happens post that is that you may not exhaust your pool fully, and you shouldn't exhaust your pool fully. You should always reserve a portion of your ESOP pool for future hires as well, for future senior hires. So as and when you make those hires, when that person is joining, you will give them a grant. So you will see when they're sort of joining, along with their employment agreement and other formalities, you will also give them an ESOP grant letter. So grant happens upfront once you institute a plan typically, and it keeps happening on a continuous basis thereafter, as and when you hire employees who are eligible for ESOPs. So that's the way your grant sort of process works. And like I said, once the grant is done, you have something called a vesting period. So you go and tell the employee that, okay, over the next 4 years, you have a grant of 1,000 ESOPs, but you won't get it in hand right now. 25% of it at the end of every 12 months or 4 years, you'll actually see this 1,000, sort of ESOPs maturing and coming to a point where you can actually convert it into shares. So every year, 250 shares, you'll get eligible to sort of exercise your ESOPs and take shares in hand. So your vesting in most cases is time-based. You may set a vesting for a 3-year or a 4-year sort of period. That's what is mostly standard. But vesting can also be performance-based. So let's say you're hiring an SBU head, and you are sort of you want to link his performance and link vesting of his ESOPs to what he does within that SBU. So you can link it to performance in that unit. You can link it to profitability, to revenues, to a bunch of, sort of parameters. So you can actually set those parameters in the grant letter itself and say that, okay, this is what I want to see you demonstrate. And if you demonstrate all of these things, you will get eligible, a vesting will happen for you. You'll actually be eligible to get these, to exercise these following ESOPs. So it can be time-based, performance-based, or it can be a combination of the two as well. There's this concept of cliff, and cliff is a term which you see being used, a typical jargon which you see being used in ESOP plans. Cliff basically says that when does your vesting start, right? So I will grant today, but my first vesting happens, let's say 12 months hence. And as per Indian law, an approved ESOP plan under the Companies Act needs a minimum 12 months before your vesting starts. So you can't have an immediate vesting, or you can't do a grant today and say vest tomorrow, or vest 6 months down the line. You have to give this gap of 12 months to have this plan approved by the Companies Act. So a 12-month cliff is standard in Indian companies, but your cliff can be longer, if you sort of deem it fit. And what are the intervals of vesting? So what I have seen, let's say, prior to joining Capita, has always been a yearly vesting. And, people just find it easy to say, okay, you have a yearly vesting, 3 or 4 year period. At the end of every year, we'll give you a certain proportion of your, we will vest a certain proportion of your ESOPs. But using online platform like ours, that whole 1 year sort of construct becomes irrelevant, if you ask me. Because that was done more for administrative convenience. And if you're using an online platform, why have a year? So we actually encourage our customers to vest in a more aggressive fashion, and maybe do it quarterly, or in some cases even monthly as well. And the way we sort of see this working is that the employee actually gets a certain portion of his pool vested every month. So similar to the way he's getting salary every month, he will get some ESOPs every month, and he can sort of feel happy that vesting is happening on a month-on-month basis, sort of a thing. So yeah, intervals again is something which you decide when you sort of create your ESOP plan itself. And then you come to the point of exercise. So once my options are vested, I as an employee have the right to go to the company and to say that, yes, I have vested options. I am exercising my right to purchase the shares. So there are two ways of sort of doing it. Companies may sort of choose to let exercise happen at the will of the employee. So at any point of time, once the vesting happens, the employee has the right to go to the company and to sort of say that I'm exercising my right. I'm willing to pay the strike price to you. So please take that. And please give me the shares in hand. So from this portion onward, the employee ceases to be, with respect to those options, he will not have those options. He will actually have shares in hand representing those options. And he will actually come on to the cap table of the company. So companies also do allow free exercise. But from a taxation perspective, it results in a tax outgo for the employee when he exercises the shares. So this again is one of the reasons why I said that the taxation regime is a little bit, sort of restrictive as far as ESOPs are concerned. So the way companies sort of manage this is to, sort of keep exercise linked to a liquidity event. So basically the company tells the employee saying that if I allow you to exercise whenever you want, you have to pay me the strike price. And I'm happy to price the options very reasonably, so you may not end up paying me a lot. But my company's value might have increased from the time I gave you the option to the time you're actually coming to me for exercise. And you'll end up paying tax, even before you actually have cash in hand. So these employees are not having an option to sell the shares. They're just getting the shares in hand, but the taxation actually happens at that point. So if exercise is actually allowed, maybe a good portion of the salary which the employee is made in cash has to be forked over to the tax authorities just to get the shares in hand, right? So companies may want to avoid that, and even employees may want to avoid that. So certain companies actually say that we will allow you to exercise only when I have visibility that you'll be able to sell the share. So if an IPO happens, or if I are selling the company, then I'll allow you to exercise. Or if I'm running a liquidity program with one of my investors, and my investors are sort of stepping in and acquiring shares from you, then I'll allow you to exercise your ESOPs and sell the shares to the investor. By doing that, you actually will realize cash in hand, and you'll actually be able to pay the tax. So you may want to, mirror your taxation outgo with the inflow which you get on selling the share. So you may want to link your exercise to a liquidity event. So this is, becoming fairly very common in India. But having said that, some of the larger companies also have a free exercise. They don't restrict exercise. They leave it to the, sort of a discretion of the employee himself. And finally, after you get the shares in hand, eventually you will want to monetize it and realize cash. This is a sale happens, typically in a liquidity event, or it happens you may be able to sell if the company goes public. So your startup goes for an IPO, the shares start trading. You have shares in hand. Post the regulatory lock-in period, you'll actually be able to sell it in the market. Or when you sell the company to a larger strategic player where employees is able to sort of realize cash. So this is the whole sort of life cycle from the time you decide to create an ESOP pool to actually creating it, granting, vesting exercise, and finally the employee realizing cash in hand. So it's useful to with this sort of background, it's useful to actually evaluate a few structures which are common. There are multiple sort of ways in which your ESOP plan and ESOP scheme can be structured. So your standard ESOP plan, the way I told it, it is an actual option. It is something which you will sort of grant to the employee. You'll give a vesting schedule, and post vesting you'll allow him to actually convert it into shares. That is what in our mind works for startups, unlisted companies in, let's say, 90% of the cases. So that's fairly standard, and a lot of what you see here pertain to your standard sort of ESOP plan. Just a few things to think about as you implement a standard ESOP plan is that you may have a pool, you may create a pool when you raise a round of funding, but your pool also gets diluted as you raise successive rounds of funding. So you may have a target in mind to say that at any point of time, I want to ensure that 5% of my company or 8% of my company is held by employees. So you may want to top up this pool at every round of funding, as and when you sort of see relevant. So that's again a common practice which happens, with standard ESOP sort of plans. Apart from that, you may have heard these terms called SARs or phantom stocks. So SAR, and they are applicable in certain sort of scenarios. So SARs basically are like the easiest way to understand it. It's a very gamified bonus scheme, involving cash payout for the most part, which is linked to the price of your stock. So like I said, right, one of the frictions in adoption of ESOP scheme is where founders may feel that I don't want to give the actual legal right of ownership to employees, but I'm very happy to give my employees the economic interest in my company, right? So in those situations where you don't want an employee to be a shareholder and to sort of go through that process of actually issuing shares to him, and where you feel that potentially there could be restrictions on you if you let's say try to sell the company, etc., you may choose to go in for an SAR sort of a scheme. So it's basically it mimics the operation of an ESOP plan, but without actually shares being involved in the picture. So you can actually say that I'm going to have a pool of, let's say, 10,000 SARs, and you can grant 1,000 SARs to to one of your employees, and you'll have the same flow, grant, vesting, and instead of exercise. So exercise is where in an ESOP plan the employee converts it into a share and holds the share with him. In an SAR scheme, you don't allow any shares to sort of get into the picture. What you sort of do is that you settle it for cash. So in most cases, SAR schemes are sort of used when you have a cash payout. So you basically tell the employee that, okay, I'm giving you 1,000 SARs at a strike price of, let's say, 100 rupees today. You wait for 3 years, and at the end of the third year, whatever is the valuation of the company, whatever is my price per share, I can do a valuation or based on my last round of funding after 3 years. I will sort of give you guys cash, give the employees cash, so that you see the same benefit as if you have held a share. So you're mimicking the whole structure from starting exercise, holding the share to sale. You're avoiding all of the corporate secretarial activities involved in issuing a share to the employee. You're just giving him cash, right? So the employee still benefits. Taxation wise, there is not a major difference between these two. He still gets cash in hand, and ultimately, even if you hold a share, ultimately you may want to sort of monetize it. The only little bit of a thing which SARs or a consideration when you implement an SAR is that the company needs to cough up the cash here. So where in an ESOP plan, you have an option. You can do a buyback, and the company can still use the cash it has to buy back shares from the employee. But in an SAR, but in an ESOP plan, you may also get an investor to purchase these shares, right? So your liquidity can take the form of either an investor or through an IPO, etc. In an SAR scheme, the liquidity has to come from the company itself. So you will have to find the cash to sort of pay out to the employee. So rather than calling it a share payout, it's going to be like a bonus. As far as tax authorities are concerned, you have just given a one-time bonus to employees. You calculated the bonus based on your share price. which is absolutely fine. So the IT authorities basically look at it as a perquisite, as part of salary itself. But you have to ensure as a company that you have enough cash in hand to actually fulfill and provide liquidity to the SAR when the sort of liquidity trigger happens. And you need to sort of give a commitment to say that, okay, I'm giving you an SAR. You don't have an option to sort of sell it as you would have with a share. So I'm going to give you a time frame of 3 years. So you actually have to define the 3 years upfront. Which could be a problem for companies, because you may not very credibly know your cash position, or you may not be very confident that you may actually have the cash to take out SARs in a 3-year or a 4-year time frame. So this is more suitable, I would say, for companies where the founder is very confident that I am going to generate lots of cash, and I will actually have cash in hand, excess cash with me to pay out to my employees. So I can take care of my employee upside myself without relying on an external investor, sort of a thing. Where SARs also have relevance is for non-employees. So we have seen in some instances, and I have seen this particularly for a healthcare company, where they have doctors on the rolls, but not as employees, and they are practicing doctors, so they have a consulted agreement with doctors. But unfortunately, your ESOP scheme, as defined by the Companies Act, is only supposed to cover employees. So I cannot cover a consultant under the ambit of an ESOP scheme. So one way to sort of manage it and to give your doctors, let's say, also an equity upside is to have an SAR for these doctors. It's also relevant for international jurisdictions, employees in some international jurisdictions. Specifically, let's say we have seen this for employees in France and Australia. There is some sort of additional regulatory compliance and some adverse treatment as well. In case those employees who are domiciled in these geographies have, let's say, an equity incentive scheme for a company in India, or let's say for a company in Singapore. So for those international jurisdictions, typically an international company implements an SAR and ensures that those employees also get the same sort of treatment as employees in other jurisdictions. And like I said, the most important thing is to actually have the cash to sort of give the commitment to take out an SAR. Your SARs may also be equity settled. So cash settled is what is most common. You will actually have a situation to say that whatever is the value of the SAR at that future time frame, I may have the right to issue shares to you in lieu of that value. Right? So instead of giving cash, you can actually make a fresh allotment of shares to that employee. But in that case, it pretty much operates very similar to an ESOP plan. So the difference between the two actually becomes negligible if you go in for an equity settled sort of SAR. Another sort of terminology which is becoming very common is RSUs, restricted stock units. Now, the way internationally RSUs are sort of recognized and understood is very different from the Indian scenario. And I'm just going to cover the Indian scenario here. So an RSU basically functions very, very similar to a standard ESOP plan, with only difference being that your strike price of which you define for your option is going to be the nominal value. So it operates like a deeply discounted ESOP. In an ESOP plan, you have the flexibility to set your strike price. You may want to set it at a certain, you may want to set it close to fair value or at a reasonable discount over fair value. But in an RSU, you just set it, if it's a 10 rupee face value sort of a share, you just sort of set it at 10 rupees, which means that you may actually be giving a phenomenal sort of an asset to your employee, even when you're actually making the grant. So that's the way it works. Otherwise, it functions in terms of vesting, exercise, sale, etc. It functions very similar to an ESOP plan. Where it has value is that if you price your options at a very low price, you are actually able to give higher value to the employee, because the value of an option, like we discussed before, is FMV of the company, the market value of the company less the strike price. So the lower your strike price, the more value the options have. So using a smaller pool, you'll actually be able to give a higher cash value or a higher value in terms of value payout to your employees when you actually grant the options. So you can get more bang for the buck out of your ESOP pool by underpricing your options by doing this. But the flip side to consider here is that your investors may have a point of view. They may say that, why are you pricing your options so low? And I can understand you giving a discount to employees, but you shouldn't give them such a massive discount, especially when you've asked me to invest in the company at a certain valuation. So there may be some pushback from investors, if you sort of consider it. Another consideration here is that an RSU will definitely have an impact on your P&L. So where you are underpricing your options, you will see a P&L charge, sort of coming through, which is the difference between the fair market value less the strike price. So the more that amount is, the more is your charge to the P&L. But again, this is not something which we very commonly see among early stage, sort of startups. You may have an ESOP trust. So rather than, having an ESOP scheme, you may issue options or you may issue shares to a trust, and the trust basically holds those shares with them. And instead of an employee exercising, when an employee exercises an option, rather than having a company issue a fresh share, the trust transfers the share to the employee. So you're basically creating an intermediary. You're issuing the shares upfront. So typically your ESOP pool comes up in your cap table as a separate line item. Your MCA records may not actually capture a ESOP pool, but if you have an ESOP trust, you will actually see shares held by an ESOP trust. So you create a trust and you actually have shares with the trust. Where is this relevant? It's more relevant for listed companies, because otherwise, you have to issue a new share whenever an employee exercises his ESOPs, and you need a board meeting approval for the allotment of shares. So in a listed company, in a large company, you may not want to conduct frequent board meetings. So you just give it to an ESOP trust, and whenever an employee exercises, the trust basically transfers the shares and the employee becomes a shareholder. So just to avoid administrative, sort of hassles, you may want to keep an ESOP trust. And for whatever reason, if the company wishes to avoid dilution in a future date because of fresh issue of shares, you sort of basically create that pool right now and issue those shares to a trust. Right. This may happen, one sort of scenario where I may see this happening is that where your investors may take a call to say, okay, you haven't created an ESOP pool before, but I don't want to get diluted in case you're creating an ESOP pool in the future. Right. So if that's the case, we see that the founder, rather than issuing fresh shares, the founder can transfer a portion of his shares to an ESOP trust. And then you will have a pool to actually implement your ESOP scheme. So that's one way of managing it. But again, this is something which is more for listed companies, not as much for unlisted and sort of smaller startups. You may also have an employee stock purchase scheme. So rather than having this whole sort of process of ESOPs, vesting, etc., you just give an upfront option to employees to say that, I'm going to issue shares to you guys at a fairly discounted value. You can sort of figure out a way to finance the employees in terms of purchasing these shares. But you're basically instituting a scheme to get employees to become your shareholders. So you avoid the entire option, sort of workflow, and you get employees onto your cap table from day one, right? So this again is possible. What it means is that there's no concept of vesting. So if you're looking at your incentive scheme, your ESOP scheme to act as a tool for retention, this may not really work, because employee can very well take the shares and he can sort of quit and he'll still have the shares in hand. And as per your SEBI regulations, there is a bit of a lock-in if you institute an employee stock purchase scheme. So again, this is not very commonly done, but for whatever reason, if the founder feels that my employees don't understand ESOPs, I want to give them shares. I want to give them share certificates so that they can actually see that share certificate and say that I hold the same thing which my founder holds. From a very, very softer perspective, that's a consideration you may want to consider an ESPS. And I'm also going to briefly cover this concept called sweat equity, which actually is not it has nothing to do with ESOPs, but it is a manner in which you can give stake to employees. So Companies Act has a provision for issuance of sweat equity shares, basically to say that there are certain people who have worked with you in setting up the company and running the company. You recognize their efforts and appreciate their efforts by giving them shares at a discount, or giving them shares for free in consideration for the services which they have sort of rendered. So there are some conditions around this. Eligible employees need to have worked at least for 1 year in the company. There is no vesting, because employees, again, similar to ESPS, they become shareholders from day one. But there is a lock-in of 3 years as per the Companies Act. And there are some limits with respect to how much sweat equity shares you can sort of issue. Again, not a very commonly sort of known or used concept, but it is there as a provision. In case, for the same reason, if the founder wants to get their employees onto the cap table directly, right? Certain rules of thumb with respect to granting ESOP. So several times we have been asked a question to sort of say that I am not sure as to how many ESOPs I should give to an employee, or I'm not sure as to what I should price my ESOPs at. Do I keep it at a very, very low price? Do I price it equivalent to my last round of funding? How does that work, right? So we have a few rules of thumb just to give founders some perspectives. We also have an Excel template. Maybe we can find a way to share it with people who are interested after this call, where we just created to again help in the decision making process itself, right? So when I'm deciding how much to give an employee, uh, um, what I have to consider is my pool size. So I may have agreed to create a certain pool. So I may have a certain pool of, let's say, 50,000 shares, and I may have a certain set of employees, and based on let's say their contribution to the company's efforts, I may want to figure out as to how much each of them should be given. So the limiting factor here is your pool size. You can be very, very generous with respect to giving out ESOPs, but you have agreed with your investors to create a certain pool, and ideally you should operate within that pool. Otherwise, what may happen is that you have to go back to your investor and tell him that, I want to give more ESOPs, can I increase the pool? And your investor will say that, no, that dilutes me. So then how are we going to compensate me? So you get into a discussion like that. So you are limited by whatever pool you've sort of agreed to create. One way to, maybe think about and communicate the value of ESOPs is to look at the CTC of the employee. So a very common way in which people communicate, or startup founders communicate to employees, is to say that, okay, I'm hiring you. Let's say I'm paying you something like 25 lakhs for the year. And I'm going to give you a grant of ESOPs, which is equivalent to, let's say, 25 lakhs or 50 lakhs, which is like 1x or 2x of your CTC itself, right? That's just a good way to sort of give an employee an immediate sense to say that, okay, apart from my salary, I'm getting something valued at 25 lakhs to 50 lakhs today. I know that I'm not going to get it in hand, but I'm going to get it over the next 3 years. But guess what? Over the next 3 years, that 25 to 50 lakhs also may go up multifold. As a company does well, the 25 lakhs might read as 2.5 crore. It can grow 10x, let's say, in the next 3 to 5 years or so. So the employee also has a reference point to actually figure out what the ESOPs are worth. So one way to actually communicate ESOPs to employees and figure out how much you want to give to an employee is to look at his salary, which is, at some level, a benchmark of how much value he's adding to the company, and try to benchmark your ESOPs as to the, sort of a salary itself. When it comes to pricing of the ESOPs, you may choose to price your ESOPs very close to fair market value. One very, very clinical way of thinking about ESOPs is that when I give an ESOP to the employee, it should actually not have any value. Because why am I giving an employee, a sort of a free lunch in some sense today? The employee should work with me, and the value should only be realized in the future, right? That's a very, very, very clinical and very, sort of restrictive way of looking at ESOPs. And the reason why most founders choose to price their ESOPs at a discount to the fair value. So your fair value typically is, maybe your last round of funding, or your own estimate of how much your company is worth at this point of time. You may always want to price your ESOPs at a discount to that value, right? Because you want to give the employee a sense that he's getting something of value on day one. So if I have done a deal at, let's say, 100 rupees per share, I've gotten investors, angel funded or seed funded investors at 100 rupees a share. I may want to give ESOPs to my employees priced at with a strike price of 50 rupees a share or 25 rupees a share. So that when I actually give a grant to the employee, he immediately calculates to say that, okay, number of shares into 100 minus 25, 75 is a gain I'm making today, right? And obviously the 100 will also increase in the future. The reason why this is relevant, especially for early stage startups, is that you may not be able to pay market salaries when you get your first set of employees. You may end up getting employees at a discount to market salary, and employees will join because they get a phenomenal work culture, and they get a lot more additional responsibility as working for a large company. But there is a sacrifice which they're making in sort of joining a cash sacrifice which they're making in terms of joining the startup. So you may want to give them a certain feel good to sort of say that I know that your market value is 35 lakhs and you're coming and joining me for 25 lakhs, which means every year you work with me, you're losing 10 lakhs. But guess what? I'm compensating you by giving you a 50 lakh ESOP, sort of a pool, which is worth 50 lakh today, right? That could be one way to sort of think about pricing of your ESOPs itself. And another way to think about it is you ask yourself as a founder, saying 3 years hence, how much will my options be worth? How much will my company be worth? And thereby, how much will the options for this employee be worth, right? So in this case, I can go and tell an employee, okay, 50 lakhs today. I'm giving you a grant of 50 lakhs, which is worth 50 lakhs today, which will vest over 3 years. But I think that 50 lakhs will at least go up by 10x. Because I'm very clear the pricing of the company and the market valuation of the company should grow by 10x, and all of us are working towards it. So don't think of it as 50 lakhs. Think of it as a 5 crore payout for you, provided you and I do our jobs well and things work out well for us, and you take this risk along with me over the next 3 years, right? So one way to think about it, and sometimes even the employee thinks about it this way. to say that, okay, I'm taking a sacrifice and I'm working for the startup, and I'm taking a risk along with the founder. Sometimes the employee himself or herself may have a view to say that, okay, given that I'm working for the startup and I want to work and see this through till the startup gets listed or the startup actually gets sold, they may have a sort of an exit value in mind, and you may actually have an exit value in mind as well. So it may be a very open conversation to say that, okay, you're going to work with me, and obviously there's a component of equity, sort of incentive here. How much do you think you want to make as wealth in 3 years by working with me? Just get a sense from the employee and try to see if you can match his expectation, right? That is one way of, sort of determining pricing as well as quantum of your ESOPs. The other factor is determining eligibility. Whom should I actually give ESOPs to, right? And this is, fairly common. You have to give it to you may want to give it to your key management personnel, people who, sort of have a key role to play in your company. So typically your functional heads, your CEO, COO, CFO, people who run business units, your head of sales, etc. And any other employee driving value creation. Because ideally, the way technically it's supposed to work is that your employees should, sort of be in a position where they influence the value of the company through their efforts, and thereby get a portion of the value back through the ESOPs. But that's a very clinical way of looking at it. That would actually mean that your functional heads and support functions should not be given ESOPs. But yeah, you want to definitely disproportionately give ESOPs to the people whom you believe can drive the valuation of your company. Tenure can be one thing. People who have been with you, especially in early stages, who have stuck with you through difficult times, you may want to sort of consider that in determining, eligibility. And the last point is not so much a constraint, but more, like I said, an onus on companies to communicate. Companies have to, ensure that the employees have to understand the value of the ESOPs, right? Which is why, in some cases, we see companies saying that, okay, I am going to offer ESOPs only up to a certain level and not below. Because I may have certain employees who operate at a certain level, and I don't think that they will understand the value of ESOPs. So I don't want to give ESOPs to them. But this again, it varies from founder to founder. In my mind, I think this again is a little bit restrictive. I think the challenge is actually to give ESOPs to those people and actually, sort of communicate the value of ESOPs to them so that they also feel motivated, right? But having said that, that is something which a founder also thinks about. Is the employee, does he understand enough about ESOPs to actually feel excited about it, right? So I'm not going to spend too much on taxation and accounting. Although I'm a chartered accountant, I don't see this as sort of expert sort of areas for me. But just giving you a perspective of how taxation works. So like I said, taxation event for ESOPs in India is on exercise. So when an employee goes and he asks for the option to be converted into a share, the tax guy catches you and you have to pay tax as a difference between whatever is the value of the company as on that date of exercise, less the strike price. So in this case, let's say the company is worth 1,000 rupees a share. The value has increased. And I have an exercise price of, let's say, 50. I'll end up paying tax at 30%. It's treated as a perquisite. It's basically income from salary. So I'll pay the maximum marginal tax on the full, sort of 950 rupees per ESOP. So this is where I said, it's a little bit restrictive. Employees may not even know this when they go in for an exercise. And then the company, it's a company's onus is on the company to deduct tax. So then the company has to tell them that, okay, if you're going to exercise these shares, guess what? I have to deduct tax. So the monthly salary for you for this month is going to be sharply reduced because you're exercising your ESOPs. So this is, a revelation for quite a few, sort of employees when the exercise actually happens. One way to handle it, like I said, is to restrict exercise and not allow it until the point of time a liquidity event sort of happens. But that's the way the tax, sort of regime in the country stands today, and that's where things are. So this is the taxation upon exercise. So that itself is a taxation event. There is obviously a tax you'll have to pay when you actually sell the share. So let's say I go down this path, I exercise my ESOPs, I have the shares in hand. And then a liquidity event happens and I sort of sell these shares. So typically, when you're selling the shares, unless it's, let's say, through an IPO and you're selling the shares in the stock market, you will end up paying capital gains. So if the time period between exercise of the shares and the sale, if you have held on to the shares for more than 2 years, you pay long-term capital gains at a lower rate, at 20%. If not, you pay short-term capital gains at 30%. On the difference between your sale value less the exercise, sale value less the FMV. You've already paid tax from exercise price to FMV. Now you'll pay tax from FMV to sale value. And that may be capital gains, it may be long-term or short-term, right? So that's an additional taxation event which happens when you actually convert those shares into cash. But given that you already paid tax, that becomes a benchmark for you. That becomes your acquisition cost, basically. So, like I said, I've already covered this. Ways to manage tax. You may also want to give a long exercise period. So you may allow exercise, but you may say that I'm not going to force you guys to exercise. I will give you a 5-year period to exercise. Your options may vest. After vesting, you have 5 years. So within those 5 years, if you're very confident of running a liquidity event, you can sort of manage this tax impact and ensure that the employees don't go out of pocket for tax, right? So that's one way of sort of thinking about it. So I'm just briefly covering accounting as well. Again, it's very theoretical because most startups don't really see this as a huge issue, because if you issue ESOPs at a discounted price, it creates a non-cash charge. So your P&L gets impacted, but it's not going to create a cash outflow for you. But having said that, we all want to run profitable companies, and this starts becoming more and more relevant as your company matures. So the two ways of sort of calculating the hit to your P&L. One is called the intrinsic value method, where you say that I will value the share. So ESOP is eventually something which will convert into a share. I'm going to get a value of the share, and I'm going to say that whatever is the value of my share less strike price, that is an expense for me. So at the time you're granting ESOPs, you actually undertake a FMV, fair market valuation. You figure out what your strike price is, and the difference between the two you will recognize over the period of vesting. So if it's a 3-year vesting, based on your vesting schedule, you take a hit to your P&L for that quantum. Right? That's one way of sort of doing it. Other way of doing it is to value the option itself. You look at an option as a call option, as a derivative, and you use a typical option pricing model like Black-Scholes. And you use a value to sort of, you use that method to actually value the option itself. And that is the value which you will recognize over the period of the vesting. So two ways to sort of decide what is a hit to your P&L, but whichever way you sort of decide the quantum, it is recognized over the vesting period. So it's a non-cash charge. It is not something which results in cash outflow for you. So you will recognize a cost, and then you will recognize an ESOP reserve, which will stay on your sort of liability side. Which will either get reversed in case the option is getting lapsed, in case the employee quits and he sort of renounces the option, or if the option lapses because of time, or which will actually become share premium and share capital when the employee actually exercises his sort of ESOPs. So that's just from a taxation accounting perspective. Now I'm just going to turn it over to Srikanth, who will actually cover what the key aspects of ESOP administration, what after you get your ESOP scheme, drafting and getting your ESOP scheme set up, and what happens thereafter. And Srikanth will also show you as to how our platform can actually help you in simplifying this process. So over to you, Srikanth.
Yeah, hi Vikram. Thank you. Thanks. And I see there were a lot of questions. So Vikram, maybe you can also run through the questions, and if you want to add to some of the responses, you could do that. But yeah, there were some very interesting questions. So thank you. And let me just share my screen. So I think Vikram broadly covered a variety of aspects with regard to ESOPs and the terminologies, the various aspects at your disposal as you kind of create your own ESOP plan. Let me go back to the slide that Vikram was on. Vikram, are you able to see my screen?
It's visible, Srikanth. Yeah.
Okay. So let me come to the administration. So basically all that Vikram spoke until now, let's try to put like a chronology to it and also see how our product, so as Vikram introduced us, so we are basically building a product to basically manage this entire life cycle of ESOPs, to make it very seamless, easy and digital for founders like you. Most of you I see are founders who have joined here to basically manage your entire program, ESOP program, and also the post-exercise workflow, and I'll talk about that as well. So just summarizing the various, kind of chronology based on a typical, ESOP scenario. And then we'll quickly get into the platform where you can actually visualize a lot of what Vikram said. You can actually visualize it on the platform itself, the entire life cycle, right? Until at least the exercise. So typically, what is the starting point for ESOPs? There have been questions also where founders are keen to create ESOPs right at incorporation, which is a very good practice, I would say. But to be very realistic, a lot of startups actually create ESOPs during their fundraising kind of discussions.
So Srikanth, if possible, you can just make it full screen. Use slideshow, I think.
Yeah,
I think
just a sec. There is some. Just a sec. Some issue with my screen. Yeah. Am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible, Shrikant.
Okay. Is it full screen now?
I think
Or
it's still showing, the speaker view basically.
okay, okay.
Or if it works, what I'll do is, Shrikant, I'll just continue to share
Okay.
my screen.
Yeah, that will help. That will help. Yeah. Should I unshare?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Like I said, while it's a good practice to have incorporate ESOPs, and especially when you might not have the exact core team or the core co-founding team in the beginning, and you might have to look at bringing very strategic people during the course of your journey. Then obviously you need to have a certain pool to reward them as they join your mission, especially during the early days when they, of course, you might not have the company might not have the cash flows to compensate them basically. But like I said, typically you see this happening at the shareholder, the investment level, and there you see that ESOPs are typically indicated as conditions precedent to closing or conditions subsequent to closing your shareholder agreement or your investment round itself, right? So the ESOP pools there's a mention of ESOP pools in your SHA itself, and that's the starting point basically for you to consider creating the ESOP pool itself. When I say consider creating ESOP pool, obviously what it means is creating an ESOP program. So you will have a plan, basically ESOP plan document. We have certain templates. If somebody needs help in creating one, we can definitely share that and also talk you through the various parameters that Vikram just spoke about, and how do you basically customize a plan that is specific for you, which includes your pool size, the various vesting related aspects, exercise related aspects, etc. So the second step is actually creating your ESOP plan itself, which again I'll show you. When you create a plan, because you will also determine a particular exercise price for accounting and audit purposes, you also need to take a valuation report. Typically, any valuation you have taken within 6 months can be considered, unless you have raised a new round, etc. So like if you're coinciding it with your fundraising round, it all kind of falls into place. Then, of course, this is the most critical piece, because I also heard a question. People have just informally issued ESOPs or stakes to employees, but they don't count as ESOP, because unless the board and the share company has formally resolved that this is basically an ESOP program we are launching, it doesn't formally become an ESOP program, right? So you need an explicit like board approval and a shareholder approval to actually roll out your ESOP program, right? So that is the next step. Then of course you have the grant itself. Our platform helps you do four broad things, right? So one is the record itself. So you can record your grant on our platform, and I'll show you that. Then you can communicate and you can by virtue of recording it digitally, like many people, you also asked questions on monthly vesting, etc. You can actually reward people more frequently now that things are more digital. uh, and then the last two is the communicate more often, the employee engagement and all of that. And finally exercise. The entire workflow is something I'll show you. Once you grant ESOPs to your employees, you can basically they will then vest the ESOPs. That is, they will earn the right to purchase it as they vest it. So it could be after a years of cliff, you can basically have monthly vesting, quarterly vesting, annual vesting, and based on the vesting schedule, that many number of ESOPs are available for vesting. The next event is exercise, which is where they are expressing an interest or desire to purchase the shares and exercise that option that they have been given to purchase the shares at the exercise price. And finally, once they exercise it, they become a shareholder. So they are now suddenly moved from an ESOP world to a shareholding world. So they were no longer. Some people asked about public companies, and also here is where you move from being an ESOP holder to a shareholder. And then you can obviously sell your shares as well in market. If it's public, then you can sell in secondary market. Otherwise, the last piece, which is the liquidity events, where you can sell it if there are liquidity programs like ESOP buyback programs or secondary buyback programs by other investors as well, etc. And you as Vikram mentioned, there are many examples in recent last through 2-3 months, where dozens of startups have actually gave this as an upside to their employees for various reasons, for being there during the pandemic, or for valuing their kind of services and giving predictability. And I think this is a very, very heartening sign for our ecosystem as such, because investors, other participants who are willing to acquire stake are signaling to the ecosystem that they are willing to participate in these programs, which is bringing more predictability for liquidity. Because see, otherwise ESOPs were just like a lottery ticket, right? That like in Flipkart case, they held it for 10 years and suddenly it was an upside. But who knew, whether with this, there might be many frequent events of liquidity which might bring more predictability to ESOPs, and thus, hopefully employees will be able to attribute more value, because it's not just a lottery kind of an upside, but also a predictable thing which might make their worth the effort they have put in, and they get an upside proportional to, like say, the founders in some sense, with regard to the shareholding they own, basically. So that's quick summarizing all that Vikram mentioned in a more sequential order. So let me just Vikram, if I can share my screen now, and I'll quickly in the next 10 minutes cover the basic ESOP modules that we have on our platform, and just help you as founders and service providers or employees who have joined to see how things will work in a visual way on a product like this. So let me like log into our platform as a startup. So typically you are a co-founder or you're a head of HR, basically logging in as an administrator. So like Vikram mentioned, we not just provide ESOPs, which is part of equity awards, but we have a broad platform to manage everything to do with your equity, right? So right from managing your ownership related information like your cap tables. So let me actually quickly show you the cap tables where you can see all your employees, and here is where you see your ESOPs and the equity awards. So you can actually see how much pool you have created. So you can see that this company has about 13.7% ESOP pool, which is about 1.5 million shares that they have issued, or that they have allocated. This is the virtual pool, maybe, where they have allocated. So they have not, it's still within the company in a sense. And as the people exercise, you issue shares to the shareholders, the employees, basically. And out of that, you see that 3.77% has been allocated, and so many has been unallocated, which is yet to be so you can allocate it to new employees, basically, right? So the point I'd like to make is ESOP is actually part of your cap table at the end of the day, right? Because as things get vested, exercised, these people will come out from the ESOP world and become a shareholder, and thus it can seamlessly kind of plug into the cap table as such, right? So I'll not spend a lot of time on the cap table, because we need a different session to discuss that. But you can basically manage your cap table, your share class, you can run scenarios, etc. Everything can be done more in an elegant, user-friendly way, rather than having to do it on Excel files, which end up being in boxes and multiple versions. So we want to make a single source of truth, basically, to manage every aspect with regard to your equity ownership, right? So delving further into equity awards itself, because that is the topic for today. So this is one-stop platform for managing all aspects of your ESOPs or equity ownership, right? We support options and share awards today. We are also looking at some other instruments that Vikram mentioned, which is the RSUs or phantom stocks, etc., or SARs eventually. But right now we support ESOPs and the share awards, which are like something like what Vikram mentioned in sweat equity, where you're actually giving away the share itself. While option awards is for the ESOPs, which are the options that bulk of our discussion was based on, right? So here you see that first, as a owner or as a owner of the startup, or as HR of the startup, you can get a quick dashboard of where your ESOP plans stand today, right? How much ESOP pools you have, like how much pool you have available, how much is granted, how many plans you can have. So as you see that as startup scale, they can start creating multiple pools every year, because they might exhaust the pools and they might have to increase the pool, so they can create new plans. Or we have also seen startups creating different pools for, let's say, the senior leadership that can come out for a different percentage pool, while other employees can come out from a different pool as well. So we have seen all of these nuances. So long story short, you can have multiple plans, you can have various option holders who are your employees, basically, and you can basically get a gist of all your plans here. Here is where the dashboard of each employee, you can actually drill down as an administrator, go into each employee's plan award, look at how much options you have awarded them, what's the grant date, what is their vesting schedule. You can actually see that this employee has already vested one tranche of the shares, but there are two more pending. You can also kind of get a sense of and this is very critical also. Many people have questions on if what happens if people leave the organization, right? So they leave under various various circumstances. It could be voluntary, it could be involuntary, termination with cause, retirement, death, disability, right? So what happens in each of those? So you can actually on the platform configure to the most granular level, like what happens to their unvested shares, what happens to their vested shares. Typically, their unvested shares are cancelled unless, on compassionate grounds, on case of death and disability, maybe you can accelerate the vesting itself. But vested shares are typically granted unless, maybe termination with the cause or on a disciplinary action. You can always have different ways to handle it. And then this is also a very critical variable where after you have left the company, what is the exercise period for the employee? Many a times it's 3 months or 6 months, which means they will have to exercise the stock after they leave the company within the whatever they vested within a specific duration, right? And these are all levers or configuration available to the founders to optimally give out their ESOPs in the interest of the company, basically. And then of course you have the grant letter itself, which is auto generated on our platform. If you put in all of these details, and this is a typical grant letter you would give to the employee, basically. We also have ways to accept, and I'll show you a quick workflow where you can actually accept the grant on the platform itself. So nothing is on paper, everything is on the platform. So on day one, how do you actually create your plan, right? So you can actually create a plan on our platform itself. We have all the details that Vikram spoke about is something you can configure one by one. Otherwise, you can also basically take a plan itself and then onboard an existing plan that you might already have created, right? So you can do both ways. So you can create then you can name a plan. You can you create an option plan or a share award plan. You can mention the class of shares which will be issued to the employee on exercise. You can give more details like how much is the plan size, so how much pool. So for example, we were discussing if it's a 10,000 shares company, then you're allocating 10%, then maybe you will need to create another like 11,000 shares, depending on what your ESOP pool is. Then you also need this is very important, the board and the shareholder approval date. So you need to have pass those resolutions and kind of attach it here so that you are complying by it. Otherwise, without board approval, it will not have any legal validity. Then things like vesting schedule, right? What should be the vesting schedule, and whether you need to include cliff, etc. All that you can kind of mention here. What's the number post cliffs? So that will actually tell you how it will kind of. I'll show that at the grant thing. And also things like you can have various configurations around exercise. Many a times employees would prefer to have a infinite exercise after they leave the firm as well, but as founders you would want to limit that. So you can have either a fixed exercise, or as the employee spends more years in the company, you can extend the exercise period post termination as well, and or keep it perpetual also. So or you can specify a period that after 3 months from the vesting date, etc. There are also cases, and these are all different. These are all use cases we configured based on feedback from founders themselves. So some people want to vest shares, but give the vesting, but they would still want to lock in the shares. So there are lock-in period for exercise where you can say, you still lock in the shares after vesting also in some sense. But you can actually configure those things in the vesting itself so that you give the vesting until the time you want the shares to be locked in, basically. So these are all, I mean, the point is, it's quite granular. The platform is quite granular for you to, ensure all your nuances or your expectations can be taken care of. If there is an SPV, like Vikram mentioned, like a trust, you can actually give those, details here, and, that is put. And then separation, again, like I said, at a granular level for every case of termination, what happens to each of the shares you can configure here, which gets configured in the default plan. And if you want to give some repurchase period details where you're giving some indication to the employee on what is the repurchase of these ESOPs to give that upside at the fair market value. And finally, the any documents that you need to attach for approval, etc. So then it kind of gets summarized and you can create the plan, right? Once you create the plan, you can manage the plan. So you can actually view all the plans. And you see that there are 3 option plans available here and one our share award plan, and you can basically view the plan and see all the details that you just put in, and also amend it, basically like increase the pool or change the vesting schedule, etc., etc., which again would require a board resolution. So this is the quick summary of the creating and the amending the plan. And once you have created the plan that you can give away, you can start granting to new employees or even existing employees whom you want to top up their ESOPs basically. So you can actually put their employee details. So let me actually show you, like we have our favorite employee whom we always give a lot of ESOPs. So we have Shane Coates, who is an employee, and we can select a plan basically. So I'm selecting a particular plan. Everything gets pre-populated. I can select a grant date, let's say it's today, and then some exercise price. Like Vikram mentioned, it can be different from FMB also, but typically it should be closer to that. But you can give an upside, like upfront upside, if you choose a lower exercise price. And you can also like give some shares. Let's arbitrarily say some 1,000 ESOPs are being given. You can then decide on the vesting date. So let's assume they start vesting from today itself. So you'll see that the vesting schedule starts getting generated. So you can say no immediate vesting. You put like a 12-month cliff, let's say, and then you can put some vesting at percentage. So you say 33% of the shares get vested after the cliff. So you see that out of 1,000, 333 is there, and now all the others are basically vested soon after that. But then you can also give now vesting. Let's say we start vesting in years first. So now you can say uh, let the overall vesting be in 3 tranches. So you can put 2 tranches after the cliff. So that now you see sequentially in 3 years, 33% is being vested basically, right? And you can also put the lock-in and the exercise price, specify the exercise period as well. Now, like Vikram mentioned, let's say we don't want to do it in annual, but you can actually do it in monthly as well. So you can do it monthly as well, and you can actually let's say it happens over 3 years. So let's say about 35 things. So now you see that after 1 year 33% is vesting, but from there onwards every month the proportional shares are being vested basically. So it just gives a sense of accomplishment for the employee, that I'm achieving something month on month as I stay in the company basically. Why is it easier on the platform? Now everything is automated, and I'll talk about that a little, where no one has to kind of manually communicate. Just imagine you have 100 employees and each of them is vesting at different schedules. Everything is automatically communicated based on this platform. Once you have determined this vesting schedule, you can actually then tweak it further. You can like accelerate some certain of the vesting. So you say, let me just put another 100 shares soon after, but then then it will get proportionally divided or something. So that is sorry, I just close that. So let me just do that very quickly again. You can kind of put all the details again. Let me do that. So let's say we are giving 100 shares, grant date of today, and then 1,000 vesting. And then here's where we had decided how to do it. So we had included a cliff of 12 months, and then put the 33% upfront. But let's just stick to yearly vesting for now, and then 2 periods post vesting. So this is how you will create your vesting schedule, and you can basically, what I was showing you was, you can tweak each of them, override things here as well as your vesting giving away, or you can delete a vesting schedule and things will get auto kind of corrected. The thing, you can configure the separation details for each level of, you can actually determine what happens. You can add further feeds, like like their any some jurisdiction related specific details. And here you can basically, and either you can, if you already have given the grant, you can record it on the platform, or you can shoot a grant on the platform itself. So we can actually say, today, like it's a week, you are issuing the grant today, let's say for your employee, and they have to return accept it by a week. You can put the grant in any other documentation, and then you don't need any specific approval because the plan is already approved. And if I do next and review, so you get a way to review everything, and I can do a grant. Now, why I showed you all this is, a simple way you can just give a grant to any employee, any existing or a new employee. We also have ways to integrate with HR management softwares because we are built on APIs. So you can actually integrate it with any HR management softwares, and it will pull up all your current employee information, just like I could select Shane Coates in this example, right? So this is the way you do. So, and once Shane Coates logs in, so let me actually show you that also. So you can now like, let me log in as an employee. And this is the advantage of the platform, that even employees will have access to the platform, but obviously they will have access to only their portion of the ESOPs basically. So if I log in as Shane Coates, first thing you see is that the Shane Coates is already having some ESOPs basically. So you see he already has about 12,000 ESOPs, and then out of which you will get the split of how much is unvested, how much is vested, etc. And we are also giving a slider here, and this is going back to the value communication, basically the communication aspect, where you can actually tell that, say if your startup is valued at say 287 million, you can actually communicate to Shane Coates that okay, his shares are valued at 314,000 Singapore dollars, right? So in a way, they can basically see as the value of the company is increasing with serial investments or growth, their ESOPs are also growing at a particular proportional way, right? And you also see that Shane Coates, other than equity awards, which are ESOPs, the Shane Coates has also exercised awards, and they now it's part of the shareholding. So he's also part of the cap table basically, right? And if you go to Shane Coates tasks, you will see that there is this is the award we just gave him. So you have been awarded with 1,000 options, and I can basically accept the option award. So this is exactly the option we just created on that platform. So see, everything is more digital here, and I can just click and accept. And the moment I do it, uh, so I have to just click here. I have to confirm with the terms, and when I do it, you will actually see them. So if I go to the dashboard now, you'll see instead of 12,000, now there are 13,000 ESOPs, and you'll see those award details mentioned like serially. So Shane Coates have been awarded so many ESOPs during the course of his employment basically. And you'll also see Shane Coates now will be available on the cap table with the whatever shares basically Shane Coates has exercised is now he becomes a shareholder to that extent. Now if like one question was there, if the company was public, then he could have actually sold this share in open market and realized value for this share. Now it's no longer an ESOP basically, right? So this is the entire life cycle, right from creating a plan, resolving to create a plan, to create a plan, to grant, then vesting, exercise, and then becoming a shareholder, right? So this is the overall platform. Let me stop sharing, and maybe there are a couple more slides I wanted to show. Let me see if this time it works. Uh, yeah, is it visible?
Yeah, you can just keep it in this view,
Yeah, let
Srikanth.
me do that actually.
Yeah.
Some issue with that. Okay, so so I just showed you the demo. So very quickly, uh, we believe ESOPs are a great way to improve employee engagement and retention. So we are also creating a very unique concept called equity payslip. So just like you have monthly cash payslips to communicate the cash component of the value you are giving to the employees, why not create an equity payslip to communicate the equity, like how the value is accruing. So we want to give a very nice view for each employee as they log in, similar to the one we showed, but more enriched information as to see, give them a graph of how the value is accruing with varying valuations, and how much is exercised, how much is vested, unvested, exercised, etc. All of those. So this is a unique concept that we want to bring in and encourage a lot of founders to leverage this as a communication tool to attract and retain your employees basically. Yeah, I think that's the last point I wanted to just mention was uh, ESOPs will are like a lottery unless there is a predictability in liquidity, and that is the last piece we are working towards, where we want to work with founders to give them what we call as company led liquidity. So enable them to offer liquidity to their employees and early investors by running several programs like ESOP buyback programs or share buyback programs or share transfer programs itself in secondary market, because we believe the startup ecosystem is only going to go vibrant, and there are many HNIs, retail investors who are now invested in stock markets, etc., but want to take positions in startups as well. And maybe we want to build this whole that's why we're building this whole cap table and ESOP as a continuum, so that tomorrow we transition this into the secondary market world and allow people to acquire some of these positions, so that the employees and early investors are able to get the value more predictably in definite time frames than having to wait for 10-12 years for an exit or for an acquisition or a IPO kind of a use case. So with that, we'll take a pause. I know that we are kind of shooting running out of time. We have certain features we are giving offer to the startups who have participated here. So our product is complimentary for 25 stakeholders and up to like startups that have raised less than 1 million. We are giving it for this audience. And then we have a very affordable product, because we eventually want to get into transactions. And we also have certain other features which I'll not discuss a lot here, but maybe answer any questions which is remaining. But these are some things we can discuss offline, and I'll just leave with our basically contact details for you guys to connect with us. So maybe we can open the floor for any more questions. I know that a lot of questions have been addressed, but any last set of questions we can address here?
Sure. So in any case, I guess we can, we'll be available and our contacts are there. Please feel free to reach out to any of us. We'll be very happy. I think Shrikant and I are the one common thing we have between both of us is we're very excited to work with startups, solve problems for startups. So we'll be more than happy to have just an informal, sort of session. And if you see value in our product, we'd be happy to have a conversation on that as well.
Perfect. So I think thanks everyone for the patient listening, and a very nice set of questions that hopefully we could address. Some of them we can definitely take it offline and have a more specific discussion on your use case. And yes, happy to engage further from here. And would like to thank TIE Chennai and Priya specifically for helping us with this setting up the session. Thank you.